Hey, welcome to Java with Juli. This podcast is a production of Authentic Intimacy, which is a ministry helping people make sense of God and sexuality. And hey, I've been away for a couple months. Most people probably don't know that because we've been still releasing episodes that I recorded before I left, but I've had a sabbatical, which has been amazing. And I'll talk about that a little bit next week. But for this week, I brought a very special person with me. None other than my husband, Mike Slattery. Mike.
That's it. I'm here in the flesh.
Yeah. So I'd say a few months ago, we shared you and I talking on our cruise. And
our cruise?
we were on the cruise. It wasn't
our cruise.
It was not our cruise.
Okay. Let's be clear.
I can't tell you how many text messages and emails I got that week. Like, oh, I loved hearing from Mike. He's so funny. You got to have him on more. So here we go.
Those are all from my mom, right?
There were a few.
My publicist.
Yeah. So back by popular demand.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah. Nobody knew that I was hiding how funny my husband is.
That's right. You get me all to yourself, right?
There you go.
All the humor.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm sharing you.
Yep. There you go.
So we just celebrated 32 years of marriage.
Yes, we did.
Last week. We had an anniversary.
Went out to a date. Went to a nice Brazilian place.
Yes.
That was really fun.
It was. It was fun to think about memories.
Yes.
And one of the things that you do over 32 years of marriage is you make a lot of decisions together. So I guess we know a thing or two about making decisions, although we're still learning. But yeah, can you think of a decision we made even maybe within the last week?
Well, where to go to dinner?
Yes, we did. Where are we going to go for anniversary?
Where we go for anniversary dinner? I think that was one. What else? I don't know. It just seems like we're in a rapid fire season of decisions have to be made quickly, just with life stage that we're at. So I think that comes at us pretty quick. So I think we've been doing a lot of that. So
yeah, making decisions about our adult children, how to be engaged with them, and caring for our parents and neighbors, and just all kinds of stuff. Whether it's financial decisions, work decisions. So we also work together. But let me ask you, is there one decision early in our marriage that you think revealed how differently we approach things?
Am I allowed to bring those up? Or
Sure, go for it. I can edit you.
You can edit me?
Yeah.
You have the power of edit? Well, he told me not to bring this one up.
And don't bring it up. No,
I mean, I think that's a good one, though.
Because you were right.
Well, that helps. That's definitely the leaning. No, but I do think, because I think both of our vantage points have merit to it. But I think in that particular one, it really truly showed how our decisions were based on our own personal experiences. Do you want me to talk about the dreaded decision?
Go for it, yes.
Well, the dreaded decision was we were, 10? No, 10 years in? I'm trying to think, about 10 years in, married, and we had kids, and we had two vehicles at the time. And we had an SUV, and we had your Saab that they don't make anymore.
Yeah.
And I was driving your Saab because you needed the SUV for the kids, put the car seats in and all that fun stuff. And I was going to work in the winter, and I was on the road, and the guy in front of me was completely wrong. Stepped on his brakes too quickly. I wasn't playing with the radio. It was before iPhones and all that fun stuff. And I hit him, and I slid into him. I did step on the brakes, but I just slid. It was going downhill. And it wasn't, I was going like maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, but it did, the Saabs are made for safety, and they crumble like a cookie. So it totaled the car, even though the car was fine in the sense that they just can't replace it because of the old model, all the fun stuff. So anyway, we're in the car market all of a sudden, and we had a little bit of money from the insurance company for the Saab. And I'm like, okay, let's put this as a down payment for a new vehicle. And you're like, I don't want payments. We have to be able to get whatever money we got from the insurance company. I'm like, honey, we want a new car. We don't want to buy somebody else's headache. And you're like, I don't want payments. So we went back and forth.
And I cited Dave Ramsey and
because Dave's always right. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, he's got some good financial principles.
It's nuanced. So we went back and forth on that, and then I said, okay, we'll go your route, and we used that money to get a used minivan. Probably one of the worst financial decisions we ever made. I'm just saying. No, but we made it together, so I will own that I listened to you.
This is why I didn't want you to tell this story. There's so much subtext here.
But anyway, then that was we just kept putting money into it. Like whatever we bought it for, we ended up putting that much more money into it, just keep it moving. And that was kind of tough. But I do think, once again, you were right in the sense of saying, hey, I don't want to put financial strain on our family. We didn't budget for that. We didn't have a monthly payment into our budget, and times were tough at that time. And for me, I'm always of the school of thought of, I'm always like fixing old stuff. I'm like, man, it's just better to get something new and take really, really good care of it. I mean, that's just something that I do for everything. Get it new, just service the heck out of it. And then it runs for 15 plus years or whatever. So that was kind of my take on it. But it did. I think it caused, obviously, if we're still talking about it 20,
you still
22
bring
years
it up.
later, that was a big decision that we made. But it did highlight, once again, like my experiences versus your experiences.
Yeah.
And your conservative side of things, and I'm conservative, you're ultra conservative when it comes to finances. And I think that really highlighted, once again, our personalities, how I'm willing more to kind of be a little bit more, take a little bit more of a risk, where you're like, if it's not in stone, we don't have it written down, it ain't happening kind of vibe. So
Yeah.
is that, you remember, do you remember it that way? Okay. Now the counterpart, you can.
No, it's all right. I mean, we don't have to get into it.
It's not a counseling session right now.
No, it's
we don't wanna
not.
open
I mean,
that
I
up.
think it shows that sometimes decisions stick with you, and even sometimes decisions you make can come back to haunt you. Like, I mean, seriously, it's like, and one of the reasons I tell you not to bring it up is because, like, I think whenever you look at, oh, I was right about this one, there's decisions where I was right, there's decisions you were right, and we're learning together. So it's not a scorekeeping thing, or, like making one person feel like they've got a better idea than the other.
True.
So, and I think that goes to another point. A lot of people think the big decisions will break or make your marriage. And there are some pretty big decisions, like, do we move? Do I leave my job to start my own company? And that means we might go into debt. Or, some couples really feel strongly about, we should go to this church or that church, or tithe or not tithe, or, have kids or have more kids. These are consequential decisions that you walk out together as a couple, and they do matter. But I think sometimes we overlook the importance of little decisions because they don't seem to matter. Like, how much are we going to spend on groceries? And, like, do we go out to eat or do we stay home? How social should we be? Like, should we be together with other couples a couple times a week, or do we really need our alone time? And so there's all these littler decisions that you're constantly making as a couple. And while one decision like that won't make or break you, I think we become maybe kind of like naive to the fact that the patterns of how we make decisions does impact you. And that's really what I want to talk about more today, is like, how do you get into a pattern of making decisions together so it doesn't undermine your marriage?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, too, it's the communication. I think even when we have those decisions of the one that shall not be named about the vehicle, but seriously, to go back and do an autopsy and go, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And not the decision itself, but just in the communication of it. And I would say that was a successful decision because I listened to what you had to say, you listened to what I had to say, and I said, okay, this is really going to bother you, so we'll go this route. And I literally didn't hold that over you. I didn't say, oh, Julie, here we go. Yeah, it was frustrating, but it wasn't like something I'd use. All right, maybe I have used it before.
Yeah.
Not often, but my heart is not to say I'm going to use this as a club to beat you up, to go, hey, you made a bad decision. It was more of, hey, that was really important to you, and I stand by that decision. I made it with you. I wasn't shying away from it. I'm like, yeah, we made it because I didn't want to cause you that anxiety that it would cause you if we started, doing something that you thought we couldn't afford. So I didn't want to go down that path. And I thought, once again, that in and of itself was a successful decision. Do you agree?
Because we learned from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was also the heart behind it. Like, I didn't want, you said this would really bother me. And I'm like, that doesn't bother me so much. In the sense that your sticking point was really giving you a lot of frustration or would bother you. Whereas my sticking point was, okay, I get it. We'll do this way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think particularly earlier on in marriage, you tend to dig in more because of what decisions represent. And for me, like, that financial decision represented like security versus risk and just wanting to be a good steward of our resources. And so there's a lot more into it than just which car do we buy. And that's why, as you're saying, the communication is so key. But when we talk about those smaller decisions, like let's take the example of, like I just mentioned, if we're going to go out for dinner, where do we go? And if one person is always making that decision and the other one's like, I don't care, or, one person never even asks the other, it's a small decision, but you're setting a pattern where one person doesn't feel heard and doesn't learn to use their voice. And so I think that's the other thing, that we need to get into is how do you know that as a couple you have a good rhythm of how to make decisions together?
So you like to know how you make decisions going to a restaurant still?
No. Did you even hear what I said?
I did hear what you said, but it's just me. I'm sorry. My mind went to the point where it's like whenever we do that decision, how does that play out?
Well, hey, I booked the reservation for our anniversary.
I know that, but that's different because you had the schedule.
How it usually plays out is you say, where do you want to go? I say, I don't care. And you say, no, you choose. And I pick something and you're like, I don't really feel like going there. That's
not true. Yeah. I say three places. Yeah. Well, the reason is because you will defer.
Yes.
And that's part of it. Like part of the rhythm we have is you will defer on decisions. You'll defer to me.
And you're really picky.
Not necessarily picky. I mean, yeah, I have opinions, but it's like at the end of the day, I think that's the dance we always do. I always like tease that. I heard some comedian say this one time. It's like he wants to name a restaurant anywhere. Uh-huh. And he's like, why is that? So when I asked my wife, where do you want to go? Anywhere. Now we know where we're going to go.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I do that. I go to you. It's like, oh, whatever you want, you will defer. Is that not true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I don't really care about it, I will.
Yeah, but even like just once again, you're talking about the restaurant. That's one of the things that we go back to and I'm trying to, I will definitely have an opinion, but I'm trying to say, hey, give me 3 places that would work for you. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the one always saying, here's where we're going. So I think that's something that we've learned. Is that not?
It is true.
Yeah.
It is something we've learned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that when you're talking about, when you said restaurants, that's where my brain went.
Okay. All right. So another thing that I think is good to hit is there are some areas of life and marriage where we've kind of learned to delegate to each other because one person can't have all the information or wisdom on every topic. And so over the years of our marriage, I think, I know, like when it comes to financial decisions, planning for retirement and paying the bills and all of that, you've taken over that area. And when it comes to making those decisions, usually I'm deferring to you. Like, I don't know this part of our marriage as well as you do. So I trust you. Mm-hmm. And there are areas where you do that with me as well.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Well, I think when it comes to the finances, since that was basically my career before coming on board with you, that's what I did. So I was around it all the time.
Yeah.
So every time I work with any bank, insurance company, investment company, I would learn what are the products, what are the pros and cons, why would you use this particular product? So it just made sense. And the same with you, it would be typically with the boys when it came to some parenting decisions, especially from a psychological point of view, because like you're studying this, you've read books on this, when you're in focus, you've had people like this you're talking to who are experts in these areas. So you had more information than I did in that. So I would defer to you, not 100% of the parenting, but basically when it came to some particular topics that I just didn't have any knowledge of. Mm-hmm. So I think that was something where we kind of had to divide and conquer. Yeah. Why try to swim uphill or swim uphill? Is that a thing? Swim upstream.
Sure, there you go.
In the Marine Corps, we did it uphill. We swam uphill. Uh-huh. But basically where it was one of those things where, once again with the boys, you've had some little training in this and you've read some white papers or whatever on...
White papers.
Well, that's what they call them, right?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, apparently I'm getting criticized for this.
No.
Anyway, so you've had some information on those areas, which I didn't, like teens and what are they doing and what's some of the focus from a developmental point of view from, just their personalities and relationships where I'm looking at, okay, let's set up a budget, for the kids or let's... Yeah. Okay, maybe I talked about mortgages to him too young.
Yeah. How old was Michael when you talked to him about mortgages?
Like 7. But hey, 7? 7 or 8. Hey, you got to get going. What's the difference between a 15 or 30 year, man? Come on, taxes.
And I remember, what did he say to you?
I'm too young to be knowing this stuff, Dad.
Dad, I'm just a little guy.
Just a little guy.
Let me live. Let me build
I loved it when I got $1 in coins and I go, okay, here's how much you take. Look at how much the government takes. Here's 35 cents. Look at all that. Uncle Sam's paying. Anyway. So, but that's kind of what we did. We fell into our area of expertise, and I think that's something that's also we had to learn how to do.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not just expertise; it's preferences and personalities. Like I've kind of learned over the years that you have a preference for how neat the house is.
And everybody should be happy about that.
I didn't say I was unhappy.
Yeah.
But
I could get some guys who aren't so neat.
you're right. I'm not criticizing you for it, but
I feel a little criticism.
not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, but you definitely have a preference for that. And
Well,
so,
hey, you know where everything is. It's in its place.
yeah, so you've kind of taken over how the dishwasher should be loaded.
Hey, there's a reason. The way they design those.
There you go. So some of it is deferring to each other with just preferences as well, and what matters to you versus what matters to me.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of decisions that you make as a couple where you both really need to be speaking into it. And, I think that there are situations in marriages where you have a dynamic where one person is more likely to voice an opinion, the other person is more likely to be quiet. And for some things, that's kind of the way we are, where I'm more of an introvert, I'm an internal processor. You have stronger opinions, and a lot of times you're more vocal about those opinions. And so we've had to learn over the years that actually both of our voices matter, even in the finances.
Yeah.
You might be making more of the day-to-day decisions, but you'll pull me into the office about once a month and go over kind of what our finances look like, our tithing, our savings, and just like, hey, I want you to have a bird's eye view of what's happening, and I want to ask your thoughts on this and that and the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Why do you do that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want you to have the information. So I would say if I get hit by the proverbial bus and I'm no longer here, you know where everything is. And the other thing is just, to not validate, but I guess just to show you, but also to get some buy-in, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. This is what we're doing. And here's why I'm doing it. And if you have some input, I want to hear it. Because I think, once again, it's both of our, God's given us the responsibility to steward what he's given us through the home, the cars, everything that he's blessed us with, but we're stewards. So how are we going to steward that in a way that's honoring to him, but also, to each other, based on what is God moving in your heart, especially when it comes to tithing. Like, I'll ask you, like, hey, here's how much we set aside. Here's some surplus. Where do you want it to go? Is there anything that ministry you've run up against, or, that has ministered to you that, or is there somebody that needs some help right now? We'll do that from time to time. And I think that's, once again, just getting a different vantage point, but also, it concerns both of us, So I think that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah. There are times where we probably both have done this, but I probably do it more than you do, where I make a decision with an assumptive close.
Listen to you, Miss Salesman.
There you go. So if you want to describe what that means.
An assumptive close.
Yeah.
For all the people in business out there, the assumptive close is always guiding you towards a decision. Like, I know I want you to say yes to this particular product or whatever it may be. So all my questions, all my data points are going to be pointing you towards that. So I'm assuming that we're going to say yes to get this new car. Let's just say it that way. So this is, you would agree that this is a safe car. You would agree that, so all my questions are going to kind of point you in that direction. And then that's kind of what you do.
How do I do that? Can you think of an example?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, this is so funny. I remember, oh gosh, what was this? I think when we first okay, this is a silly one, but I'm going to tell you this because I think it's not necessarily a decision, but it was just kind of funny where you're withholding some information or you might have misled, as you say, directionally correct. I remember when we first got married, I used to go surfing all the time.
Yeah.
And we lived in South Florida, and, salt's tough on your body, right? Your body wasn't designed to hang out in salt water for long periods of time like I used to do. So I remember we're dating or something, I was holding your hand, like, your hands are rough, or maybe I was doing yard work, whatever it was. It's like, oh yeah. And he goes, yeah, you should put some lotion on because, that's really good for you. And I'm like, guys don't put lotion on. Oh yeah, they do. My dad puts lotion on. And I'm like, oh, okay. And had a lot of respect for your dad. And so then I went and I looked and I asked your dad one time, so yeah, Dad, like what lotion you? I don't put lotion on. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe you saw him put it on once, and now you're saying
I don't remember that.
Yeah, see?
I mean, I think the one thing that's really good is a lot of these examples are from when we early in our marriage. I think
just yesterday.
Yeah,
no,
I do think we've gotten better at least I feel like I've gotten better at recognizing when I have an agenda and trying not to approach it, or if I have an agenda, just telling you right out, like, here's what I think we should do, but I want to hear what you think instead of trying to manipulate you towards the answer I want you to have.
Yeah. I think it has been good because I don't remember that happening anytime soon, or recently, I should say. And, which I think is, unless you've really honed your skills.
I have not. God just convicted me that
there you go.
when I manipulate, it's really not
That's your
asking.
style?
It's really not a decision together then.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn that over the
Well,
years.
I remember even the big decision about moving back to Ohio, because we moved out to Colorado because Focus wanted you out there. We moved out there, and it took a lot to get out there, and we were establishing, our lives and family and relationships. And we were coming back to Ohio for a family visit. And I remember getting on the plane back from Ohio to Colorado, and Ohio was like gray and dreary and
It's
sometimes,
never like that.
right. And then we just landed in Colorado. The sun was shining off the mountain. It was like, it was like a movie scene. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we live here. And then 6 months later, we ended up moving back. But I remember talking to you. We were camping, and we're coming back from Pikes Peak. We were camping back behind Pikes Peak, a beautiful park back there, and mountain biking. And I was just looking over. I'm like, I don't know, maybe God's kind of guiding us towards moving back to Ohio. And your jaw just dropped, and you like looked at me, and I'm like, what? Like, your family's there. And we were concerned because your parents were we needed some help. So we wanted to make sure we were there available for them. And that's what prompted the decision, at least for us to talk about it. And then you just kind of looked at me, and I'm like, what's going on? And you go, well, I've been praying for 6 months that if we were going to go back to Ohio, that God would put it on your heart. And I was like, you and your prayers.
Yeah. No, it was, yeah.
Right? And you didn't, so credit to you. You didn't say one thing about it.
I started feeling like God might be moving us that way. And I just didn't want to manipulate it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted God to show. And I'm like, Lord, if this is from you, just independently put it on Mike's heart. Like, I'm not going to say anything.
For 6 months, though. It was a while.
It was about 6 months.
Yeah, it was.
And so when you just brought that up out of the blue, I was like, wow, this is God. And that's something that I wouldn't have done the first 10 years of marriage, is growing in my relationship with the Lord, growing in trust, us growing, and me being able to realize that, again, my natural tendency early in marriage was to be more manipulative and to try to stack the deck to get you to do what I wanted you to do. And I did confront that.
You learned.
Yeah, I did. I think another thing I do sometimes that you've given me feedback on is I'll ask you about dates when you're in the middle of something, or you're driving and you don't have your calendar in front of you. And then you'll see the thing come up like a few weeks later, and like, I never said I wanted to do this. I'm like, yeah, I asked you. Remember we were driving to such and such, and you're like,
when you were sleeping?
Yeah, it was kind of, you're like, that doesn't count. Like,
remember when you were in the shower, you couldn't hear me?
It's never that bad.
Yeah.
No, because I just do it when I'm thinking about it. But you've started to tell me then.
Yeah, because that was one of those things that you would bring these things up where I couldn't write it down or look at the calendar. But this goes back to another thing where our personalities, you overcommit, and I feel like I got to pull back on the reins because we're doing too much, and we kind of always have that concept. That's always been a conflict for us. And so when it comes to that specific area, so I think that's important too when you're looking at decisions. What do the decisions represent? And once again, this represents something deeper in our marriage, which is we have conflict. That's been the one thing we've had conflict over since we got married, was you're going to put 3 or 4 things on the calendar where I'm like, I think we got time for 2. And you're always kind of pushing us a little bit. And so I always feel like I have to pull back. Not that I don't want to do things, but it's almost like the fun parent and the disciplinarian. Like,
I get to be the fun person? That never happens
I didn't
in our
say
marriage.
That.
You did say that.
I say it's like, but I didn't say.
I'm getting a t-shirt.
No,
I'm the
it wasn't
fun
you.
one.
I didn't say you. I said it's like being the fun parent, where the other one feels like they always have to toe the line and discipline, and the other one gets, you get to have the parties and go to the movies and go to the music parks and all the fun stuff. Where the other one's like, well, eat your broccoli and do your homework and we haven't really had a lot of issues on that. But my point being, when you start to overcommit, I'm feeling like I got to pull back, because otherwise we're just going to do too much and we're going to burn out. And I think that goes into, once again, when you're asking me questions, I like, okay, I want to be ready, because this is something that, yes, it's a decision, but what does it truly represent behind the decision? Is this tension that we always have. So I think that's very important to kind of make sure we're talking. It's not just getting dates or being convenient to get dates when I can see a calendar, but what's behind those decisions. So I've said that 3 times, right?
Yeah, you have said it a few times, and I have learned.
I'm processing.
And now I say, hey, when you have your calendar, can I go over a few things with you? And so we've learned.
Yes, we have.
We're still learning.
We're still learning.
I have heard some cliches used often when people make decisions that I don't think are necessarily healthy.
Okay.
And so let's break those down a little bit. One of them is guys will say, happy wife, happy life. And so
that's not true.
And so underlying that is, I need to make decisions just to go along with my wife if I want a peaceful home. Why do you think that's bad?
Well, I think anytime when you make a decision based on just placating another person, that's never going to work, because you're going to continue. You're not dealing with life. You're not dealing with issues. You're just making a decision so you don't have tension or, whatever that may represent if you don't agree on something. So I think that's not healthy because you're not dealing with the true issue. So for example, if I'm saying happy wife, happy life, if Julie wants to schedule something, we'll schedule it. And then we're running around, like we double booked like one trip, remember? Like, oh, we're going to have you on this date. I'm like, honey, we're doing something else that day. Mm-hmm. And I go, we can't. And so anyway, point being is that's not really dealing with the issue. And vice versa. I mean, it's the same. Sometimes it's not a cliche, but wives will be in that position. It doesn't have to be happy wife, happy life. It could be the same thing with the husband.
Right.
As long as my husband's happy, the household has peace.
Or even from a faith perspective,
yes.
Sometimes the whole teaching about a husband being the leader to some women means then he makes all the decisions. Mm-hmm. Like, I just do what he says. And that's sort of the reverse of that. Sort of the flip in some way.
Yeah, but I think also too scripturally, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I'm saying, once again, the husband is the head of the household from mm-hmm. a spiritual point of view, the spiritual mm-hmm. leader. So there's more responsibility, but what does scripture say? I got to love you like Christ loved the church.
Yeah.
So I have to, die to myself when making decisions. It's not just I get to make the final decision what I want. Is it making sense?
It does in some respect, but there's nowhere in the Bible that actually tells husbands to lead their wives.
But if we have a household, I'm responsible to kind of toe the line and make
right.
sure we're going in the right direction.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
And so that is true. Like it says in Ephesians 5 that, the husband is the head of the wife, is Christ the head of the church, but it doesn't say lead. It mm-hmm. says wash her with the water. So like take care of her spiritually.
Guide.
Love her like Christ loved the church. Lay your life down for her. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to say, okay, that's a very nuanced thing. It doesn't mean I make all the decisions.
Yeah, I'm not saying you make all the decisions. Once again, I'm saying from a responsibility point of view, from a spiritual side of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying making all the decisions or the final say, but I think, well, here's the other thing too, like in business, what I always say when you get in partners with business, you have somebody who has the final say. Mm-hmm. Well, why is that? Like there's always the 49% owners and all that fun stuff. I always talk about one of the great documentaries I always loved watching was the one on Walt Disney with him and his brother Roy. And he said at the end of the day, if this is going to work, we're going to business together with, Disney World, that I have to be the final say.
Yeah.
And you have to have somebody to have the final say because otherwise you can get into a battle of a stalemate.
Yep.
Like you have, 50%, we're good. We're not doing anything. We're not making any decision. And I don't think that's prudent.
No, you're right.
So I think, and that's a business thing, but that's kind of where I look at that just from a logical point of view. Like somebody has to have the final say. But I think a good leader is somebody who is going to do a consensus and say, what is important to you? Like, once again, like I said before with the tithing, like, hey, Julie, here's where we've earmarked these churches, these organizations that we work with or have been blessed by. But I'm asking you, I'm not making the final decision. I'm saying, hey, is there another ministry or any feedback on this? But I'm the one who's going to the bank and writing the checks and sending out.
Well, I think even a better example is the one you shared about the car. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you said, hey, I'm going to go with the decision of what's going to make Julie most comfortable. Mm-hmm. If she's stressed about getting car payments and going into any kind of debt, I'm going to take that seriously. And so when you made a decision, you didn't necessarily make that decision based on what you wanted mm-hmm. or even what you thought practically we should do. You made the decision considering my needs. And so when you take, the whole teaching of Scripture together about what the wife is doing, what the husband is doing, mm-hmm. the way you lead and make decisions is by laying yourself down mm-hmm. for your wife, as Christ did the church. And so that's why I think these cliches, either way, the happy wife, happy life is sort of a cop-out for a lot of guys, not mm-hmm. to step in and do the hard work of grappling with decisions and taking responsibility for decisions. But the flip side of that is when, a husband is just kind of autocratically making decisions and not seriously considering the wisdom and perspective of his wife. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of where you would land with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. But I'm saying too, for any leader, I think that's always a good mm-hmm. thing, is to get somewhat of a consensus of, what the group is trying to accomplish, knowing what the end goal is, and then saying, hey, and once again, good leaders will always get smarter people in the room than they are. And then say, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then learn from their area of expertise and then go and execute. But you do have to have one person who is responsible, I think, because otherwise, once again, and I think once a family that, people can kind of go back and forth on it with personalities and things of that nature. But I do think, am I digging myself a hole?
No, you're not. When I look over the 32 years of our marriage, there have been very, very few times where you made a decision without us making it together. Every now and then there'll be something that happens in the moment where you'll make a decision. Like let's say it's a parenting decision and the boys are there and we've got to decide right now.
Right.
You might step in and say, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But when it comes to weighing big decisions, I could probably count on one hand the times where you thought A, I thought B, and you're like, well, I'm the spiritual leader, so we're doing A. Like that just doesn't happen.
Well, and spiritual leader is not also the mechanics or the day-to-day making decisions. I mean, I think those are two different things. And and once again, ultimately, spiritually, everybody's responsible to God for themselves. I'm not spiritually responsible for you. I'm not spiritually responsible for the boys. But it is my job to guide us in that direction. So I guess that's more of a shepherd than anything else. But when it comes to decisions, though, I think once again, I'm always wanting your feedback because you have a vantage point, that I don't have. And I think, I've said it before, but once again, good leaders will, do a survey of the room and say, hey, what do you guys think of this? But ultimately, there needs to be one person to make the decision because otherwise you can't have gridlock and nothing gets done. So I think we've learned to navigate that in a way where I'm not going to make big decisions without talking to you and getting your buy-in. Like, what do you think? I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, Julie says we need to, I'm trying to think of a big decision. Usually it's financial or big, some of them, moving was another one. But I'm not going to say, so here's a good example. When I was working, for Schwab, one of the jobs came up and they moved it to Phoenix. And they're like, hey, do you want to move to Phoenix? I'm like, first of all, I don't want to move to Phoenix. But even if I did, I would definitely have to go, well, hey, Julie, do you want to move to Phoenix? It's a great opportunity for me. I could do this, this, and this, and, try to list my pros and cons of it. But I'm not pulling that trigger without talking to you because it affects you.
And the kids.
And the kids, 100%. And even when we moved back to Ohio, we talked to our youngest. The other two were in college, and we talked to our youngest who was still at the home. And we asked them. But what did we say? I mean, if you remember that conversation.
Yeah, I remember. We said...
What did I say?
Ultimately, like... This is not your decision. We're
Right.
going to make the decision, but we really, really want your input because it affects you.
100%. Yeah. Because we don't want him to get blindsided or to say, hey, mom and dad are deciding to move back to Ohio. But he, hats off to him. He said, hey, if this is what family needs and we need to be back to support family, let's do it. I told him he should have held out for a better iPhone. He didn't bargain well.
No.
He got his iPhone.
Yeah.
But the point is once again, that's a great example of we're going to make a decision. You're not the deciding vote, but we do want your vote, I guess, for lack of a better term.
We want your input.
We want your input, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
But his input wasn't the decision itself.
Yeah. One of the things you say to me often, because we're in a weird situation of sometimes I make decisions in leading authentic intimacy that affect you. So it's sort of like a role reversal.
Right.
I'll talk to you a lot about the decisions I'm weighing. We'll pray together. And you in the last several years have begun saying, like, I think this, but you pray about it. And if you feel like God is leading you a different direction, 10 times out of 10, go with what you feel like God is telling you.
And I think to add more nuance to that, the way I process that is I say, I truly feel the way our lives kind of evolved over the last 5 years, God has not called me to run the ministry. A lot of people think, oh, you're the husband, you should lead this ministry. I'm like, if God called me to do that, then I would do what God called me to do. But I don't feel God called me to do that because circumstances have shown that that has not been the issue because my time is, now taken on helping my parents, helping your parents, helping our children, helping you, with different things. But at the end of the day, I'm not called to do this. So therefore, why would I make the final decision if I'm not called to do it? So that's kind of how I see that, how that walks out in our life and our marriage. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it
I
does.
Mean, if I'm explaining that well.
Yeah, it does. I remember my dad saying this to me a lot growing up, and even as we were adults, he would always say, slow down. Like,
Yeah.
what's the hurry?
Yeah.
If you have to make a big decision, he's like, the vast majority of big decisions do not need to be made quickly.
Yes.
Sometimes you do have to if there's a life-threatening situation or there's a job and
those are few and far between.
They need to know by next week.
Few and far between.
And then he would also say, if you're feeling pressure to make the decision, that is probably not a good decision.
Right.
Like if somebody is putting pressure, that means they have an agenda.
Sure.
And I've heard that wisdom rattle around in my head over many years of sometimes as a couple, we can feel like we have to find resolution right now, but taking time, slowing down, saying, hey, let's as a couple pray about it. Let's talk about it. Sometimes we'd involve, fasting, sometimes involve a third party. Talk about kind of what your journey of learning not to rush has been.
Well, I think for me, especially when it comes to, I'll use one specific to us, like even before we got married, and it's kind of always stuck with me, and I share it with the boys, and I give them this advice, or anybody who wants to listen, at least from my vantage point and my experience, was when we were dating, we were dating and we're serious, and but you were in California and I was in Florida. And, back in the day, you're getting old, to make long distance phone calls cost a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
It's none of this WhatsApp or whatever, international, and doesn't cost you that FaceTime. Like, no, it cost you hundreds of dollars back then, which would probably be closer to thousands today, but who knows. But it was very expensive to make a long distance phone call. And you being in California, being in Florida, I was working 2 jobs at the time, just graduated. And I was trying to save up money to go to graduate school. And I was thinking about going out to California. And I remember I was working a double shift, and I just finished one shift. I was in my car. We had a phone call. I had to go to a payphone, use my calling card. And it wasn't a good phone call. Like, we were dating, we were trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? How are we going to get, we both were interested in getting married, but we weren't really sure what that would look like. You being in California, me being in Florida. So I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? I'm like, I can't afford to go to California, And I remember praying. I was in my car, like, Lord, do I go to California? Yes or no? And I'm getting nothing. All right, do I stay in Florida? I'm not getting anything. But then what I did get, the answer, and I always go back to this, God answers 3 ways: yes, no, or wait. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing. I think a lot of times God tells you to wait. And a lot of people don't want that answer because that makes you wrestle more with the topic, the issue, the tension. And sometimes God truly does want you to wait. And, sometimes he does want you to make a decision. I'm not saying it's, there's a percentage of any of those answers, but those are the 3 answers that God just gives. And when making decisions, I think this is one of the things we haven't really talked about is you got to pray about these. Mm-hmm. I don't know 2 feet in front of me what's going to happen. God knows 1,000 feet in front of me what's going to happen. So why am I not, as a believer, going to the Lord and asking him specifically, clearly, like, God, what do you want me to do? And give me a peace about it. And that's the other thing that I've learned over the years is that when you are making decisions, do you have a peace about it? And I know when we had to make a financial decision, I was like, do I do this? Do I do this? And I didn't feel a peace about it. I didn't make it. I'm like, I don't feel a peace about this. But then when something did happen, or was a big decision, and I did feel a peace about it, I'm like, Julie, I feel a peace about this. Do you feel okay? And yeah, okay. And we executed on the decision. So I think it's one of those things where this is like, we should put it at the top, why and how often do you pray? Always and often, mm-hmm. About decisions. Mm-hmm. And with our spouses, how are we praying about decisions? Mm-hmm. How are we praying about, God, where do you want us to live? God, where do you want us to go to church? God, where do you want us? And then really listening, mm-hmm. for where he's going. And he'll show up in showing you circumstances. He'll show up through wise counsel or give you that peace in your heart.
Yeah. Let's talk about wise counsel for a minute.
Sure.
Again, this has looked differently for us throughout the years. I think earlier in marriage, when we were first married, we had, a couple older couples that we respected that we would go to and just say, how did you handle this? How did you navigate this? There have been times where we've gone to counseling together. In this stage, mm-hmm. where there aren't a lot of couples that are that much older than us, we still have some.
No, come on.
Yeah. But what does it look like now if you and I are in a disagreement or we have to make a big decision?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned, we going back with the conflict that we've always had, which is, overcommitment versus, what are we doing? Who's owning the calendar? Has always been when we get to a point where there's an impasse. Like, okay, I keep saying A, you keep seeing B. I'm not seeing B. You're not seeing A. Okay, we need to go see somebody to help us understand, help me to understand B, help you to understand A. Like, where's Mike coming from? Where's Julie coming from? Why is this important? And I think the other thing we didn't talk about, which, when it goes to counseling or just even in life in general, is the origin story, right? Your family of origin. Like, how did my parents make decisions versus how did your parents make decisions? You come into the marriage with that template, and this is how life is done. This is how I saw it done for, the 15, 12, 30, you didn't get married at 15, the 20 plus years. 24. I was 25, 26. How did I see, decisions get made with my parents? And you come into the relationship with your blueprint, with the Ripka blueprint. I come in with the Slattery blueprint, and those don't always overlay, to where they're going to line up. So I think that's something that we had to navigate through as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally would.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's been interesting as we've gone on in life, sometimes if we have a decision to make, yes, we might seek counsel as a couple, but usually what happens even more often is you might call a couple friends that you really respect. I might call a couple friends that I really respect.
And have a battle it out.
No, but they'll give us wisdom not only on the merits of a decision, but also how are you responding to each other?
Yeah.
Like, hey, Julie, have you considered that Mike might feel this way? Or, like I can talk maybe about where I'm frustrated and just get counsel from a friend. And I know you do the same thing. And I know actually you've even started to do that a little bit with our sons as they're adults.
What is that?
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, ask them advice. Yeah.
Just like, hey, where are you seeing it?
Well, part of it for them as they get older is one, they know us. And they're at the table, not literally, but figuratively, but figuratively they're at the table for most of the stuff. Or they know if mom's saying this and dad's saying this, they know the situation, they know the issue, and we will talk with them. We're very close. Yeah, but they do give good counsel, because they do see us they know where our blind spots are. They know whatever decision it is, they know the players, they know the calendar or whatever that got us to that point. So they usually do have some good feedback on that. So that's been a blessing, is to be able to listen, be able to share with them in life and to that next level. So, yeah.
So if we could go back and you could give newlywed Mike and Julie...
Hop in my DeLorean with Doc Brown.
There you go. One piece of advice about making decisions together. What do you think it would be?
Well, I just tell people this, like I said it earlier, is knowing that I'm coming into it with a template of how to make decisions. You're coming into it with a template of how to make decisions. And we need to sit down and discuss those. Why are you doing this? How does this make sense to you? Because typically it does come from your family, right? I'm making decisions on, my dad told me that. I never want to buy somebody's headache with a used car. That's what was, I can think of it like it was yesterday. He told me that. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. And for you, you're always like taught, hey, be financially responsible. Don't get something if you don't have it budgeted. And that's very solid, wise advice. But once again, it's when I'm listening to those voices, you're listening to those voices, like, okay, how do we then create our own voice to say, okay, how does this make sense to Mike and Julie? Even if we were to get a newer car, we didn't get the minivan from the dark side. And we got this new minivan, but yet, we missed a payment, or, I get another job, I wouldn't do that. But anyway, if whatever, all of a sudden I get repossessed. Well, that's not a good decision, right?
Yeah,
Close your credit report and all that fun stuff. So there's wisdom in that, right? But part of it is once again, what is the thing that's really triggering that for both of us to kind of anchor in and go, this is more important to me, this is more important to you, and how do we kind of walk through it? So I guess the long story or the long way of get there is just know that you're both coming in with a template of how to make decisions and how do you line those up so I can understand why you're making them, you can understand why I'm making them, but how do we make it our decision? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does.
What would you say? Marty?
Yeah, I would say...
It's a blowback from...
Yes, I would say that.
Back to the Future.
Most of the time, how you make the decision is more important than what decision you make.
Yeah.
And that includes, again, how you respond after the decision.
How to rob a bank? What?
No. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. It's got to be ethical.
No,
biblical.
yes, 100%. Yeah. But even making
Which I think that is important.
Right.
I think you need to articulate that, or you need to at least talk about that too. Like people are making decisions where, how do we make decisions as believers?
Right.
It's got to line up with the Bible.
Right. And when you say, this is Julie's template, this is Mike's template. Well, okay, let's start with what's God's template.
Amen.
That's where we can agree. But
we should have started with that one.
Yeah, there you go. We can do it over again.
There you go.
But I think, again, coming back to even what do you do after the decision?
Yeah.
Because if you have the perspective of, hey, we're both trying to figure it out. We're on the same team. Nobody gets it right all the time. What did we learn from this decision? Like you're really building as a team instead of being like, well, you were wrong this time, so next time I get to choose.
Right.
And when you start to get into that pattern, or one person becomes more dominant and the other person becomes more passive,
Right.
like that's more toxic than any decision you might make.
Well, I think even too, after the decision's made, and I said this before, and I get this from, I'm not saying he should be a life coach or anything, but it was an interesting book, David Goggins' book, You Can't Hurt Me, was when he was doing things where he made decisions, he would go back and say, okay, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? Mm-hmm. And do, as he called, an autopsy. So I always tell people, like, yeah, if we made a decision and the outcome was not what we thought or what we expected, okay, let's go back. What did we say? What was the data point? Did we get bad counsel? Did we make an impulsive decision? Did we make a decision? Like I always tell the kids, like, never go to the grocery store hungry. Why? Because you're going to buy stuff that you don't need, right? Because and the same thing, don't do anything past midnight because bad things happen after midnight. You're not thinking, you're tired. So those are things where like, okay, yeah, that was a bad decision. So how do I avoid that again? And I think that's really important, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being part of this conversation with me, Mike.
I had a decision to make it. It was on the calendar that you.
I did talk to you about it. I did send you
When
a
I was
calendar
driving.
invite. No. Yeah, people appreciate just your common sense approach. I appreciate it for sure. And they appreciate your humor and you keeping me honest about things. So thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening to another episode of Java with Julie, and we'll look forward to meeting with you next week. If you want to follow up with the resource, I would say probably the best AI resource for women to follow up with would be Finding the Hero in Your Husband, because I share a lot in that book about how I've learned some of these things over the years, and you're a hero.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. What do guys follow up with?
What do you think? What's been most helpful for you?
Well, I think the thing would be, you said it earlier, is just a mentor. Find somebody who's a couple years ahead of you, who you see their life from afar or even up close, and say, oh yeah, it looks like they're doing things correctly.
Yeah.
And always have somebody who can speak into your life. I think that's always, I always say have Paul and a Timothy, somebody who's ahead of you, somebody who's behind you, somebody who you can get help from, somebody that you can give help to. So I think that's always a good thing to do.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening.